Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another mini workshop. I am Pei-Jung from Inquiry Methodology in Indiana University, Bloomington. So today we are going to talk about something. If you could recall or if you have visited our website or our YouTube channel, you may notice last time I've created a video about research ethics. So today we are going from theory back to practice. Recently, there are some students coming into our consulting service asking, okay, now I'm going to prepare for my dissertation project. What should I do? Should I do IRB? I don't know how to do that. Okay, so that is the motivation of us diving into these practical, technical issues to prepare you to start your first step of your either your independent individual research project or your dissertation work. So let's get started. Before we start, I would like to give a heads up here that this is mini workshop and the tips given here were stem from my personal experience, and please be noted that these experiences are bounded to the qualitative research. Here I will just give them from the interview-based qualitative research in educational context in IU. So noting that every study and institution has its unique context. For example, you are thinking about participatory research or you are thinking about art-based research that may engage more general audience. You may need to, I would suggest you to consult with your IRB office, or if you are in an institution outside of IU, then again, I encourage you to keep good communication continually with your IRB office. So that is, this is just a starting point, but while you're starting your IRB, work with your advisor and work with your IRB office from there. Just don't take these mini workshop as everything. This is just a starting point, introducing some of the basic steps. So before we start, let's go ahead and think about, before I submit IRB, what should I do? First, usually, people or a graduate student will already have done some literature review, or through cross-taking, you started to generate your research focuses and questions. And starting from there, you started to think about, okay, what are the things I want to do, what are population I would like to work with, and with what kind of research design. So starting from there, you are going to prepare on your research design. Maybe you already have a very approximate procedure and timelines of how you're going to do that. The reason I mentioned this is these will be necessary for you to submit your IRB protocol for review, because certainly the IRB officer, they would like to know what you are going to do with your participant. Probably you could provide a very, very general, you don't have to provide an exact timeline, but at least you have to say, okay, these are, for example, you are doing interview, then these are the questions I'm going to ask. So that's said, maybe in the next workshop, we will closely dive into what will be a dissertation process looks like. But here, let's start with the things you will do before submitting your IRB. But IRB could be or will be your first step to really start your data collection. Before you can do anything, get in touch with IRB. So let's start from here. These set of a question are from our Indiana University IRB office, where they invited us to think about, does your research meet the following criteria? For example, does that involve human subjects? Even though you are collecting information, or just through observation, individual. But anyway, does your research include or will involve human subjects? Or is your research involved the FDA, which involves probably the drug, biological, or devices that you will use with, for example, human subject again? So if you answer yes to these, or either one of those or both, then your study will require an IRB review and approval. It is possible that later on we will describe or introduce different levels of the IRB review, but even though your study requires an exam from IRB exam review, but you still have to obtain the approval from the IRB office. Again, this is under IU, Indiana University's regulation. Different institutions may work or do differently. So here earlier we say there seems to like have different level of reviews. What are those? So the first one is the exam review, which has been defined as your research project involves no more than minimum risks and meets the criteria specified in the HRPP policy regarding exam research. Therefore, some of the example is, for example, your research is conducted in a established or commonly accepted educational setting, research using tests, surveys, or observation, research utilizing pinless proof, behavioral intervention subjects would not find it unself offensive or embarrassing, secondary research use, identifiable private data. So some concrete example for these, for example, you are doing a interview based, which you are not asking anything about sensitive. Maybe, for example, you just want to understand their general educational trajectory in IU, and you are working with Indiana University's either, for example, faculty or college student, graduate student. None of these are minor, and you are only using, for example, you will say, I'm going to have a survey or I'm going to interview, but these interview questions, maybe I'm going to only do 1 hour's interview and none of these are sensitive questions. So these may fit the criteria of exam review, but always, again, check with your IRB if you are not sure. Expedited review. So this one goes a little bit above with exam review, which if your research project is minimum risk but not eligible for exam review. So what it means, for example, you are working with minors, or your intervention involves interviews that may contain some sensitive question and or whatsoever. I suggest you to refers to the links here where it provides the fall into the federal regulation of what might be some of the criteria that means the exam review. As far as I can recall, for example, you are recording video, audio recording for the research purpose, so and so on. So this is another level of a review. And there is also full board review. Usually these kind of review are done with the research that contains more than greater than minimum risks or the study procedure outside the exempt and expedited category. So some of these may involve you are maybe using some food, drugs, or have some things with biological, physical contacts, so and so on. So usually this kind of a review, because it may contain more than minimum risk, it will take longer for the full board to discuss and give you approval or suggestion, either way. Again, for all of these, I've attached the sources. So if you ever have a question, feel free to reach out or feel free to just click and go into the website provided. So we've introduced three kind of review, but still it may be confusing for people. So IU recently, I think I've never seen this before, but fortunately recently they have developed a protocol decision tree that helps researcher to decide, okay, which kind of review types my research may fall into. So this, I certainly think this is a great help for us to start to think about, okay, which kind should I start with? So before you really can submit an IRB protocol, here are the things that usually people wouldn't know, but it may prevent or it may that you unable to submit your IRB protocol because you don't have these. First of all, CT training. So CT training is regular. Generally, you have to pass a series of a process related to the historical backgrounds and the general regulation regarding research ethics. So before you could submit IRB, remember to go to the CT training, identify or first answer a series of questions to identify what are the courses you had to pass before you could submit the IRB protocol. These will probably take you a few days. So if you are ready to do your study, remember to finish this training. The second one is the conflict of interest. So other than that, the institution may also want to know whether or not you have maybe some potential conflict of interest with the participants or the institutions that you are working with. So these could be easily found if you are studying IU or if you are under IU anyway. Go to one.iu and just type in COI or conflict of interest. You should be able to see that in the system. And third, starting to prepare your research materials, including informed consent, informed sheets. If you are ready for a exam study, or a consent document if your study goes above an exam. But I just used consent document all the way because I think, I don't know, it helps me to closely monitor myself and also provide clear information to my participants of what are their rights. And also recruitment and data collection materials, such as if you are thinking about using emails to recruit your participant or social media post, make sure you have the script written out and submit those also for IRB. And if you are thinking about using interview, what are the questions are you going to ask? You prepare them and also submit it to IRB. One of the most important things I think is to consult with your advisor. I have heard, I consider this is certainly a very important step for especially new researchers or graduate researchers. That your advisor should be experienced enough to give you either suggestion to how to work with IRB or suggestion on your research design. So let's say that if you are thinking about using 4 or 5 kinds of research collection, like data collection methods, and you are proposing 4 or 5 kinds of data analysis strategy or approach, then if you involve your advisor, maybe they'll be able to give you some suggestion toward that. Either you could start from small or they will help you more logically, strategically rearrange your research design. So that is to say, these are some of the, I would suggest, must prepare the steps before you submit your IRB. And also because as far as I know, like from my current understanding is that IRB doesn't allows only student to work as PI. So you always almost want to list also your advisor or at least one of the faculty members as a PI or co-PI, principal investigators. That's the meaning. Okay. So here are some screenshots for this is the CT training website, as you may see. Make sure you're logging through your institution like IU. And this is the courses, social behavioral researchers that relates to my field, and I have completed the training. This is the IRB where if you go into one.iu, you search IRB, and then you'll be able to see all IRB services. Everything is there now. So you will be able to create a new protocol, as you may see here is button here, and start from there. So here are some tips. How do you or what are the things you should consider while you're preparing for a IRB protocol? Some general guidelines start from the ethical consideration, which I will also encourage you to look into our last minute workshop. I'm providing our YouTube video link here where I discuss some research ethics and encourage you to think beyond just IRB. However, here we start with the most basic guidelines, such as respect for person, which means you want to make sure the recruitment process and informed consent process, it's totally voluntary, that you enough or give your participants enough time and space to ask any question, to think about whether or not they want to participate and fully understand what their rights and things they may encounter during the research process. Beneficent, this involves the level of risk, which almost always during the IRB submission or writing of the informed consent document, you will always ask to think about what are the potential risks that may involve in the study. So there is nearly none study that will involve no risks at all. Even though you're saying, okay, I'm going to do only interview, well, there is still a potential risk that even though you're saying, I'm not asking any sensitive question, but you will never know, even though you're inviting them to describe their educational trajectory, there's still a possibility that they may go on and talk about some uncomfortable experiences. So make sure you think through what are the level of the risk. Justice, these relates to the recruitment process where you want to argue or clarify what and how you are going to recruit and select your participant. So later, the next one, let's say, you want to, while you are writing things about on the IRB protocol, you want to use the terms that is concrete enough that lays out clearly what you are going to do from the beginning to the end, including how you're going to reach out to the participants, what are the materials you are going to use with them, including if you're going to say, I am going to post the social medias and just spread the words around about my study, then what are the script you're going to use? And after that, what are you going to do? Are you going to let them directly contact you, or are you going to invite them to fill out an entry form and then later you reach out to them? And what will happen next? Are you going to set up a virtual or in-person meeting with them? And then how long will be this meeting last, and what are you going to do with this in the meeting? And then later, are you going to set up another interview meeting, or are you going to just dive into the interview right away? What else? So everything you are going to do in the research, think it through, write it out, and discuss with your advisor, or if you are not sure, discuss with the IRB officer. But at the same time, you could be flexible in some terms. For example, you don't have to specify that in September 2022, I'm going to do this and that with how many people. You don't have to be that detailed like these, because these will add on some difficulty if later you realize, okay, I'm not going to do this during September because life goes on. I'm instead going to do in October. Then if you, in your original protocol, you write September, then maybe you will need to do an amendment instead. So, well, you have to, or I would suggest you to lay out the things you're going to do as clear as possible, but at the same time, you don't, some of the terms, you don't have to write it that specifically. And last but not least, that you have to have all the materials ready. Like I said, what are the documents, or what are the materials you are going to involve and use throughout your research process. Of course, you may have your information sheet or consent document where you lay out the rights, the risks, the beneficial, things like that with you in relation to your participant. But also you will provide some recruitment materials, the flyers, the social media posts, the email script, the in-person verbal scripts. What are the things you're going to read out to your participant when you meet them, things like that. And then later, you also want to provide a data collection instrument. For example, you are asking them to fill out an online survey. Then you have to provide the link to the survey. You have to have the survey ready. If you are going to do some interview, even though you are saying I'm going to do semi-open interview, but still, there is always at least one, or at least a few interview questions you will definitely ask, or you will want to ask. So make sure you list these interview questions, and maybe you could add on some possible follow-up interview question. So at least the IRB review person knows, okay, what are the questions you are going to ask your participants. And they could start from there to review, okay, will these questions cause some harms or risks to your participant? Will that be too sensitive or inappropriate? So here, almost, I would say, you're almost already doing your research design, and this is definitely pushing your research process to move forward. So here are some resources, but I encourage you to also reach out to more resources. One of the things to start with is the Human Research Protection Office of that, where you could find some of the general regulations and policy in when you're doing a human research in the United States. And here, because I'm talking all through the Indiana University context, so IRB office is the place where you can find all the IU-related IRB regulation, introduction to the IRB quality system, or you could even find the consent document templates here where you can use, or the contact information of the office. And last but not least, the city training things, where other than that, you can find the IRB system and also the conflict of interest form in 1.IU system. So that's all we have for today. Again, I encourage you after these mini workshop, if you are going to prepare for your next study, think through, prepare for what you are going to do there, and then prepare accordingly. always work with your IRB officer and your advisor to help you through the very first step of your study. So anyway, I hope you best luck with your research project, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.